Good morning, all, and welcome to the BlackUSA.News morning show. My name is Donnie Glover, and I will be your host. Took a pause yesterday, needed a bit of a break. It was a very busy weekend here in the city of Baltimore, everything from the activity and development surrounding the 13-year-old from Gilmore Homes who was killed in front of Lillian Jones Recreation Center to the 69-year-old woman who was stabbed to death in the basement of Southern Baptist Church. It's been a horrendous past 7, 8, 9 days. The city's murder rate is through the roof. Governor is now talking about stepping in. Certainly something has to be done. Insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Good morning, Michael Randolph down in Tampa. But let's go to our very dear partner, especially when it comes to supporting and promoting small businesses. In addition to a lot of turkey and stuffing and gravy being served this week, Saturday, we're calling it Super Saturday, as well as from now straight on through the holidays, we have an interest in supporting our small businesses. Good morning, Paris Brown of the Baltimore Times.
Good morning, and thank you, Donnie. We appreciate your support and your partnership in helping us to promote the businesses, our area's Black-owned businesses this holiday season. And so part of our small business initiative is to do just that.
So before we go too far, let's talk a little bit about the Black Wall Street walk around the corner from your office. What'd you think? Not a bad day, huh? Not a bad Saturday.
It was a wonderful Saturday. We got a great response. We're so proud of the businesses that came out. We had a lot of, they stopped by the Baltimore Times table during the event and they said, this is absolutely incredible. We appreciate the opportunity to circulate our dollars right here in the community. And we're so proud that we're in the same community where a large concentration of Black-owned businesses have chosen to invest in the city of Baltimore and to really work to develop this area as a concentration for Black-owned businesses in the Baltimore area.
So this week, why is this week so special for you, for the Baltimore Times?
Well, it is special to us because tomorrow we are launching Celebrate the Holidays digital shopping marketplace to support our area's Black-owned businesses. We are doing this in partnership, of course, with your organization, which we appreciate. But in addition, the Greater Baltimore Urban League, the Greater Baltimore Black Chamber, Lindustry, we're super excited to have them. They're SBA's number one SBA lender. We have PNC Bank and other sponsors, the Baltimore Community Lending. So a lot of businesses and entities that support economic development and the growth of small businesses. So on tomorrow, our website goes live. We have a whole lot of businesses. We have services, we have retailers, we have restaurants, we have caterers, we have other service providers such as photographers. A great opportunity to spoil someone with a gift certificate card from spas and yoga and all that fun stuff.
What's the website?
The website will be accessible from our platform, the Baltimore Times online. So you'll be able to go directly to that website. And of course, it'll be accessible from your website, bmorenews.com, as well as from Morgan State. We're so happy to partner with them. So a lot of different entities are partners. You'll be able to assess or access the website from their website.
Okay. Who is going to be featured?
Well, oh my goodness, we have, I always get excited because I appreciate the opportunity to promote new businesses. And one of the businesses that has joined is Confetti Cake Company. And they are in Belvedere Shopping Center, and they literally are a brand new store. I'm amazed because it takes a lot as a small business owner, and you know that, to be able to invest, right? To have a retail space. And so we're excited that they've joined. Let's see. Oh my goodness. Right now we have well over 50 businesses. We're real excited. We have a whole music section. So Mesa actually will be on the platform. I don't know if you know, she has a perfume line, a men's and a women's perfume line. So we're excited about that. Um, Yay!
And this is
So,
Mesa from Morgan State University, the
excuse me.
singer. This is Mesa, the singer.
Yes. So she's on our website with her products.
Hey, look, let
Um,
me get that website. What's the website?
so it's going to be Baltimore Times -online.com. And from our website, from our homepage, you'll be able to access the digital shopping platform.
Okay, so hold on. Let me make sure I get this right. Is this it right here?
And that is it.
Okay.
Yes, please share it. I'm trying to think. Look, I don't have my list handy. Right now, we have jewelry providers, a lot of beautiful skincare products. Really, we have a lot of makers on there. So we have a lot of products that are handmade right here in Baltimore, handcrafted. So the exciting thing about that, we joke that the supply shouldn't be an issue, right? But we do hope, our anticipation is that they all sell out. We want them to be wildly successful. That's why we have chosen to invest in the promotional aspect of it, so that one, we can increase their customer base and extend their reach. And that's really the goal of this website, not only to just showcase them, but to, really increase their sales.
And this is something that's been a part of the Black press tradition for decades, supporting our businesses. I mean, that's a no-brainer. You got a Black newspaper,
right,
that supports Black businesses and others that support that newspaper. I mean, without these businesses, we don't exist.
Right. And one of the things we want to encourage is we want to make sure we're spending our dollar. They say that our dollar lasts how long in our neighborhood? What is
5 minutes?
5 minutes. So our wish position is that we begin to recycle it. But one of the things we have to do is create a structure, right? We have to create a way in which we can do that. And so this is one of the ways in which we can do it.
In mass.
In mass. And so we're excited, even with our promotional partners. We're excited because our promotional partners, they're Black-owned entities. We have My Soul Radio, that is our partner, our promotional partner. So we're excited about that. They recently won an award yesterday for their programming. So they're excited. I mean, they have 4.3 million listeners a month. So, we hope that will make a difference in the lives of the retailers that have joined the platform. And I want to say, if there anyone, we have room for plenty of businesses. So those businesses that are interested in joining the platform, they can reach out to me.
Is there a fee? Is it free?
There is no fee. So the being on the platform is really made possible by our sponsors. So so we're excited and we'd like to take the opportunity to thank them because they're making this possible.
Paris, tell us about some of your favorite businesses in the Baltimore area.
Ooh, my favorite businesses in the Baltimore area. Let me think about that. And
speaking of Black Wall Street,
wait, I gotta make you laugh. I love Terra Cafe, right? So that's right down the street. But I love what he did with his space. I like the way he took that space and really transformed it. I was in the space about 2 years ago, and the backyard was not, that outdoor space wasn't finished. And about a month ago, I went to an amazing event outdoors. And it was just great to go there and be able to listen to a Black artist, go to a Black-owned entity, literally eat and drink. And we actually distribute our papers. And so we had this whole cycle of going on of supporting each other. And so that's a good thing. That's one of my favorite places to eat. I like good eats everywhere. So the new Confetti cake bar, that's another place that's become my favorite. It's another Black-owned entity right there in Belvedere. I love. I can't. I think it's called Oyster Company. Do you know? They're in the Revival Hotel. They have the best oysters. If you want to treat yourself to a good, well-cooked oyster, they're right here in Baltimore. They're Black-owned. Kane Collective, they're a mixer company. We did a great story on them. And one of my absolute, so I use for my own personal care products, I like Divas by Cindy, and she has a whole spa. She's actually out in the county, but Fancy is a company that I use. Not to get in my personal business, but the deodorant, the skincare, that's actually one of my favorites, and they're right here in Baltimore. She's a dermatologist. Her product line is excellent.
Paris, I want to go back to Black Wall Street, the Black Wall Street Walk that Jackie Cummings and Notre Maison put on.
Mm-hmm.
You just a couple of minutes ago spoke about Terra Cafe.
Right.
So that's 25th Street.
Right.
From Howard to where Terrence is at Terra at St. Paul.
Right.
Tell me about the business ecology, the Black business ecology for that area. That is literally a Black Wall Street.
It is. It is because of the varied services that are there. It's almost like a one-stop shop, where you can get beauty care, not only beauty care products, you can get beauty care services. In that area, they also have services for businesses such as insurance, auto. And so, yes, it is a one-stop. One of the things I appreciate about it, there are several apparel brands that are right there. And I'm always amazed because if at any one time, and I don't know if you've been around when they'll send out a message and they have a block long line of fans that literally come in and support that. And honestly, when you're driving by, that is a great feeling. It's a great feeling. And one of the things that is important to note about that and the whole philosophy of Notre Maison is that within her buildings, she has about 29 businesses, but her philosophy, and we're very supportive and we'll be partnering again with her in the future, is that she takes a vested interest in the business, right? So they have an entity that supports technical assistance, but the most important, it provides an office and an incubator for them. And when they are, and she does not let them leave until they're ready to buy their own building. And then she takes steps to help to support them in that initiative. You got to get that. You got to get that. So I think that is a testament to great leadership, particularly as it relates to businesses and what she's doing in the community. And also, she has part of what she does is a youth program. And I think it's really important for our youth to see us doing these things, supporting each other, providing the technical assistance, but also helping to create generational wealth. Because in buying land or buying assets, right now you have something that you can leverage to be able to expand and grow your business.
So, any other areas of the city that feature Black businesses? Like you have there in
well, a couple of my favorites. So one is Image Center, and I have to Brother Rashid and what he does not only for the youth. He has 4 lines in that in his building called Image, and then he also has a sorbet company. He also has a restaurant, and all of these support the local economy. That is actually my favorite ecosystem my whole favorite because it's so comprehensive in terms of not only what he does for the youth. He's a living example. If you ever walk into that space, you'll see it, and he totally empowers them. So they'll come in and they're like, look, we have this order. And he's like, oh, how much do you have? Can we do this? And he really lets them, they're running that thing in there. And he just provides a direction. And he has been amazing. And I say that to say he is vertically integrated. And what he's doing now, which I really appreciate, is that.
Hold up. What is vertically integrated?
So vertically integrated is he's able to design, he's able to cut, and he's able to manufacture and retail. And so that's really important. And his fabrics, they're sourced right here in the U.S. And why is that important? When you look at some of the brands, the urban brands, and I'm going to say that he is actually manufacturing for, it cuts a lot of they don't have to import, right? So you don't have that. But more importantly, he's able to work with them locally, and the turnaround time is like 2 weeks. So if from a cash flow situation, if you are needing to shore up your inventory, and he's a great partner, and he works with the brands. He has 20-something years in the industry. He's inspiring in that he will work with you to help you develop a brand, right? Your own brand, and so that's really exciting. And then the other thing, he private labels, and so there's a lot of opportunity if you're interested in creating a brand for him, for Rashid to work with you. But I'm so excited about the 4 brands that he has there. One Be More, Baltimore. You're probably familiar with that clothing line. But he has a young brand, and it's escaping me now. Oh gosh, I can't think of it. It's a children's line, and the children actually designed that line. And forgive me for not remembering it, but 50% of the proceeds go to the nonprofit. And so children are actually designing, and he has a retail pop-up location. So he has 4 locations for these brands. And so they're able to sell these brands. And I think that his collaboration, which I'm super, super big on, and partnership with the community really is a great example. The other thing I love about what he's created in that whole ecosystem there is he employs people from the community, right? So he employs people directly from the community. So they live in the community. He's invested in the community. The other exciting thing a lot of people don't know is he has a sorbet company, sorbet brand, and he is actually the brand that private label the Oreos brand. So that sorbet, they're the actual company behind that. And one of the things that I like to share with, I used to rep products, and one of the big opportunities always was people want to develop their own brand. And one of the things I was successful in is private labeling. And so you can have a brand, but you can go to a retailer and say, look, let me private label. Right. So it doesn't make a difference where the money's coming from. Right. You can private label for any entity and still have your brand and make money. And so if you do pencils, right, you can go to someone else and say, look, I do pencils. You have your brand, but then you have their brand. And one of the things that and because I was in retail, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that private label sits right next to a major brand, and sometimes major brands private label the store brand, right? And so they don't care which one you buy, right? Because if you buy,
they just want you to buy.
Exactly, because you're buying it, it's going into the same pocket. So that's So that's Image Center, and he's doing some amazing things. He'll be opening up, and he'll probably could share a little bit more, another location to really be a benefit to the community, both on the east and the west side. So yeah, he's doing his thing, and I love it, and we support him here.
And again, that's the Image Center, 2132 West North Avenue, in between Pulaski and Smallwood. Rashid Aziz, Made in Be More Clothing, also Frozen Desert Sorbet. Right. And he's a great example of what happens when both parties work together. He was able to get money with the support of both Republicans and Democrats. And quite often here in a 9-1 Democratic city and a 2-1 Democratic state, I don't see as much emphasis as I would like to see personally on business. Quite often the emphasis is on jobs at Hopkins, jobs at University of Maryland, but we needed to come uptown. And I think that's one of the big challenges with Baltimore, a lack of investment in West Baltimore, in East Baltimore. Quite honestly, not far from the EMOD Center is Coppin State, which was able to get more money from actually Ehrlich than any governor, any administration ever before. And so I'm reminded that business doesn't care what party is in there. And if you're going to survive, let alone thrive in the world of business, you have to be able to navigate regardless of whomever the governor is. But on that note, how is Peter Bramble?
Oh, he's doing great. So he is doing great. We have a new article in a paper called The Blue Line.
Peter's back.
Peter is back, challenging us to think, right?
He wrote a column years ago about the overcome. I would read it every week. He would inspire me. I mean, the church St. Catherine's just around the corner over in Druid Heights. And from a business perspective, from a political perspective, I've always appreciated what he's brought to the table. And again, here in Baltimore, too often, if you ask me, we have this clear-cut democratic mentality, whatever that means. At the end of the day, I don't care who wins. I care that my neighborhood is being developed. The economics in my neighborhood, I care that they are being, that attention is being paid to them, and somebody understands what our needs are from an economic standpoint. We can't just invest in the inner harbor. I mean, if you look at the inner harbor wish that it got as much attention as it used to. I want to be, if I'm in business, I want to be around 25th and Charles.
And we got a lot going on up here. As we can say, we got it going on up here.
So tell me more about Peter.
Woo, well,
I heard he has an authentic African stool.
He has
hold on. You in a new building, for those that don't know.
So we're across the street.
New location.
Well, new location. It's a bit larger. So what we are doing here, we're working on making the space available to small businesses. And that's on our upstairs location. We'll be in this particular building opening up a studio, recording studio. So the Baltimore Times, you'll hear more about us in terms of podcasts, really working to develop our digital assets and our social media platform. And that includes Peter Bramble with our Blue Line. He has a podcast. And so we've been getting quite a bit of attention, even from the President of the United States and on our social media platform. So, yeah, really challenging and also making really the community aware of some things. And, a lot of people may not know, but the Minority Business Development Agency and that whole entity, and you mentioned Ehrlich, was established under Republican president, with the support, obviously, of Perry Mitchell. So yeah, just a lot of just making, like you say, it's money, right? It's money is what is needed in our communities, and so yeah, that's what we're doing a lot of, just kind of putting the word out there, challenging us when it comes to global warming, right? When it comes to, we have an interesting article coming out, or op-ed, that talks about college versus and I can't internships. You have and I'm a big advocate for education, certainly, but there are also a lot of jobs. I read an article about the need for manufacturing jobs right here in the U.S. And nothing was more telling than this pandemic and the need to be able to develop our resources right here. And that's why entities like Image is so important. And so, yeah, talking about non-traditional issues confronting them, um, uh, unapologetically, right, and with boldness, and about we need to have these conversations.
Education. Tell me about education. What have you guys been covering in the realm of Baltimore City Public Schools or academic achievement, academic excellence? Clearly, we're in a city that's riddled with a negative storyline about the murders. Just a 13-year-old girl was just killed last week in front of a recreation center. What have you guys been? What's been your angle?
Well, we have not. Well, one of the things in terms of education, obviously, we report about what's happening here in Baltimore City from a positive standpoint. Let's put it that way, in terms of scholarships and money being made available. One of the things, and I can talk about a few initiatives that we're excited about, and working to get more into the schools and sharing our publication. When we hear about the gun violence, we hear a lot about that. In one of the reasons, and I think you already know why the publication was started. It was started because of so much negative publicity. And one of the things, I mean, when we're in our office, obviously we get so much email. At any time, we get 50 to 100 emails about so many positive things that are going on. So one of the, we believe our mission is to balance that. These things happen, but there's a lot of good going on. And when we were, we used to deliver to the prison system, and we would get all kind of fan mail. Why? Because we do need to be inspired. We still need to hold up these examples. Yes, these other things happen, but we believe we have a role not only in providing the positive news, but even in education. So we'll report about. Actually, we had a whole lot of, I think, over 5,000 views of the NASA initiative with UMBC and with Morgan State. So even though there's a lot of negative going on in terms of education and what's happening, there are some good things going on right here. And we're so proud to be able to bring that to our community, because we do need to be uplifted. And we believe that that's our role and mission, and that's what we do. We are sensitive to what else is going on, but we have our place, and we love what we do here at the Baltimore Times.
So before we close out, let's go through the upcoming week of business.
Oh, the upcoming week of business. So one of the things that you're going to see a great article about, so thank you, Baltimore Times. Oh yeah, Rosa is awesome. So I want to say, let me just quickly talk about Rosa. We have redesigned our digital space online. So we'd like for you guys to log on, subscribe to our newsletter so that you can get your weekly dose of positive news. But we have a expanded section there, Rosa. You can log on to find out what's happening and what's going on around town here in Baltimore. The news for this week. ABC, we're supporting them. They have Oprah as part of this giving campaign, which is on the 30th of this month. And she'll be in conversation with Diane Bell McCoy, executive director of ABC. And another exciting thing that's coming up is, and then we've also done a feature article about that, so check that out. That comes out on Friday. The other great thing, we are supporting Baltimore Community Lending. They've been supporting small businesses over 35 years. We are so pleased to be able to support Watch and Bruce. They have an event on December 2nd at the Reginald Lewis Museum. And so we'll be there supporting them, as well as other local Baltimore entities. And so, yeah, and the news continues to develop. So if you want to know fully what's happening this week, at the Baltimore Times, you can log on to Baltimore Times-online or pick up a copy of our newspaper. So, Pratt Library, you can pick up a copy all around Baltimore City. We will have those locations posted on our website. So that is your weekly dose of positive news from the Baltimore Times. Yay.
Sound like a pro. How can people get in touch with you, Paris?
You know what? You can contact me directly. I appreciate it. We love hearing from the community. We want you to share with us your good stories. You can contact me directly at pbrown@btimes.com. We want to hear from you. We love hearing from the community.
Any final thoughts before you go?
Yes, I want to wish everyone a very, very, very happy Thanksgiving. That's it for now.
Good stuff.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being so supportive of the Baltimore Times, our community, small business. We appreciate what you do in highlighting our businesses, not only in Baltimore City, but throughout the U.S. Thank you so much.
I'm glad you'll be joining us Saturday for Super Saturday online.
But yes, I will be there.
First year big event beginning tomorrow. Baltimore Times-online.com. Paris, we appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing. Stay safe out there.
You too. Thank you.
Good deal.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. This has been a busy week for politics. My man, Neil Dubovsky. A whole lot's been happening in the news. How are you, Neil?
Good. Good to see you, Donnie. How are you?
I'm grateful, sir. Grateful. Kyle Rittenhouse. You know the guy?
I never met him personally.
Well, so his defense attorney, you know him.
No, so I know that one of the attorneys in the Arbery case.
What was the defense's name?
Oh, the defense attorneys in the Rittenhouse case, I'm not sure, but one of the attorneys in the Arbery case down in Georgia.
Oh yeah, Arbery.
Yeah, you got 3 defendants down there. The guy who actually was the guy who fired the shotgun that killed Arbery is Travis McMichael. His defense attorney is Jason Sheffield. Jason Sheffield is married to my cousin.
Okay, Mark Richards is the guy whose name I was looking for.
The guy in the Rittenhouse case.
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's start with Rittenhouse because that one's hello to Rico, Michael Haney, Michael Randolph, Paul Stanley. Were you shocked? Was anyone shocked at the Kyle's comments?
Those are 2 different questions, right? The acquittal. Was I shocked? Was anybody shocked? I was not shocked. But people were shocked. And I think one of the reasons why is I think there was a lot of misreporting in the news about what the case was actually about. And I will tell you, one of the things that sort of became clear to me is that there should have been a lot more emphasis placed on the law in the Rittenhouse case and what the law was in Wisconsin, because I think if the media had covered that more accurately, instead of covering their perceived narrative, I think fewer people would have been shocked by the outcome based on the way self-defense law operates in Wisconsin and the facts of that case. And I think they covered it very similarly to the Georgia case, which to me was a travesty because they're 2 very different situations. It should take the jury in Georgia about 12 seconds to convict in the Arbery case. That to me is a fairly slam dunk case. The one in Wisconsin was very different, factually.
How?
Because it's a couple of reasons. From a self-defense point of view, you can only invoke a self-defense argument as a criminal defendant if certain facts are present. In other words, you have to be placed in a situation where somebody else is threatening either your life or threatening you with serious physical harm, and that you act reasonably in the face of that threat to protect yourself.
I think what people didn't understand in that is that it skipped over the entire fact that this young man went to a hostile situation looking for trouble. It wasn't like he went there as a bystander. And his mom, why wasn't she locked up?
So again, you're asking me a couple of different questions.
Would you drive your child to another state with a gun?
not in a million years.
What are we saying here?
If one of my kids came to me and said, and see, this is part of my frustration with the Rittenhouse case. To me, the people are sort of falling in two different camps. The people who, say, oh, the guy should have been convicted. It was clear that he was guilty. And then the people on the other side who not only, think that he should have been acquitted, but are somehow celebrating him as some type of hero. And I find myself somewhere in the middle, meaning application of the law, in my opinion, required the acquittal. But this kid isn't a hero. If my kids are younger than 17, but if one of my kids came to me as a 17-year-old and said, "Hey, Dad, there's a protest going on, and I don't think that the state's doing enough to protect people. I'm gonna go on down there and insert myself in the middle of this, and I'm gonna take an AR-15 with me." There's no universe in which I'm going to tell my kid, "Gee, son, I think that's a swell idea. Have at it." Kyle Rittenhouse, whatever you may think of the criminal component of the case, exercised exceptionally poor judgment and made some horrendously poor decisions, none of which is worthy of celebrating or being lauded at all. But to me, those are different questions than whether or not he was guilty criminally.
Attorney Robert Fulton DeShield, thank you for joining us. We're talking about Kyle Rittenhouse. What about the murder victims, the families of the murder victims, Mr. DeShield? Where's their jury?
Well, the jury found that they weren't murder victims. The jury found that they were aggressors and that Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense. I was wondering whether or not there were charges for transporting a weapon of that kind across state lines. And I don't know whether he was even charged with that.
He wasn't, and I can actually answer that because I was following this relatively closely. Turns out that the weapon was given to him after he already entered Wisconsin by somebody who had legally purchased the weapon in Wisconsin. So the weapon itself technically was never transported across state lines. Otherwise, that would have been the basis for a federal charge.
Then I'm wondering why there wasn't a conspiracy charge. Because obviously that all had to be prearranged.
It all had to be prearranged, and I think there were some legal technicalities. For example, one of the charges, which seemed like a slam dunk when it was made, was that he was illegally in possession of a firearm. Nobody disputed that he was in possession of the firearm at a bare minimum, and his defense attorneys came up with apparently some arcane argument about the legislative history of the statute and that it was designed only for weapons that were longer than a certain, again, I don't pretend to know the details, but they made a very technical statutory construction argument that would bore anybody who's not a lawyer to tears. But the judge agreed with them that this particular statute was not designed to apply to that weapon. So right or wrong, whatever you may think of that ruling, they were successful in getting that charge dismissed before it ever went to the jury.
Okay. All right. Donnie, what was your question again? No one was murdered here. So if to the extent you ask, at least according to the jury.
No, I was asking about the victims' families, the people who got killed. Can they sue? For instance, can they sue in a civil case?
Well, I mean, they can. I don't know what the laws in Wisconsin are with respect to what you have to prove, but the fact that he's been found not guilty in a criminal charge where the standard of proof is considerably different than in a civil matter, it is very possible that the families could sue in civil court and actually recover. But so that's possible, yes.
It's fact the first civil suit was already filed.
Oh, okay.
Neil, any thoughts on the family of those who were shot to death?
I mean, devastating, right? To me, another reason why none of this is worthy of being celebrated and why the entire situation is a tragedy. There are three families that, one of the victims survived, but two families were coming up on Thanksgiving who don't get to celebrate Thanksgiving with family members. And, there's nothing any of us can say that's going to, replace that void in their lives. But to me, there have been other situations criminally for decades, generations, where people have ended up dead, but their death wasn't the result of a crime. Whatever, again, setting aside what you think of the situation, not all deaths are criminal, legally speaking.
Well,
Neil, you say you were following this much more closely than I. Was the was the person in Wisconsin who gave presumably or ostensibly gave the weapon to Kyle, was that person, did the prosecution call that person as a witness in the case?
I believe they did. Don't quote me on that. And I know there was no conspiracy charge. The only charges in this case were leveled at Rittenhouse himself. To me, one of the fundamental things, and I find this interesting, again, I don't practice criminal law myself, but my understanding is that in most states, obviously the state carries the burden beyond a reasonable doubt to establish guilt.
Right.
That's the way our system is designed. But I believe that in many states, when a defendant invokes self-defense, the burden, at least as to that, shifts to the defendant to prove that he or she acted in self-defense.
Right.
In Wisconsin, it's different. And that was one of the other elements of this case. As soon as a criminal defendant in Wisconsin asserts self-defense, the burden remains on the state to prove that they did not act in self-defense beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a significant factor in how these cases play out in Wisconsin. As this case may have played out differently if it had been prosecuted in a state where the burden was shifted to the defendant. It's a legal technicality, but it's relevant.
It almost suggests that Wisconsin was chosen as the state where the vigilantism would be conducted. I mean, there were a lot of other places around the country where there was unrest relating to the issue, and I'm sure that transportation wasn't a problem for young Kyle. So I suspect that Wisconsin was selected for that very reason. That is a significant change. I mean, that's a significant difference, a distinction.
Very much so.
In Wisconsin, and more likely than not, the other 49 jurisdictions.
Is there any relationship between the defense in this case with stand your ground? Is this at all relevant to stand your ground?
Yes. Certainly in Wisconsin, they have a stand your ground provision that does not require somebody to retreat if faced with death or serious bodily harm. So in this case, legally speaking, once confronted with that fear, Rittenhouse was within his rights, so said the jury, to not have to retreat before he responded with lethal force.
Mm-hmm. Mr. DeShiel, how will this affect young Kyle throughout life?
I have no idea. I saw. I'd have to be at least a psychiatrist and maybe even something more to be able to answer that question. But what I saw, the little bit of the trial that I actually followed when he, quote, broke down and according to some was having a panic attack, which I don't believe for 1 minute, but I didn't see any tears that day. I saw just, I saw a face that was contorted in a certain way. I saw and all that, but I didn't see any tears. So I frankly think that was all an act, to be quite honest with you. So if I'm right, then the effect upon him may be minimal. I mean, it just depends on, whether the effect of killing somebody ultimately depends on whether the person you killed is recognized as a human being, is recognized as having a right to life. Whether it's like the pilots who dropped bombs never saw their victims. Right, so they weren't human, or the families or the people who were the subject of lynchings, the people we weren't human, so I can't evaluate how someone who feels as though they took the life legitimately, or took a life of someone who's other than deserving of life, how that would affect them in their future.
Neil, the question has been raised repeatedly. If Kyle were black, he wouldn't have made it to trial.
I think that's right. And I certainly think there's a plausible argument that the outcome would have been different. But I think the emphasis here, and again, I speak solely as a lawyer from a legal perspective, is that it would have been wrong to convict a black defendant based on what the law is, not correct to convict a white defendant when the law, at least the way I interpret it, led to an acquittal. I want to respond to the question you asked, Robert, for a second, because I think something much more significant is happening right now, and it scares me. what happens to Kyle Rittenhouse next? The hope, which unfortunately I think is going to end up being unfounded, is that he recedes into the background as a 17-year-old kid who did a really bad thing, who learns his lesson and moves on with life. I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's already. I think he's already being co-opted and is being co-opted by people who are looking to celebrate him as a hero and elevate him to a pedestal. It's not a coincidence that the first interview he did when this was all over was Tucker Carlson on Fox News. And my fear is that what leads to vigilantism isn't the act itself, because again, these trials are very fact specific. What leads to the vigilantism is the hero worship of the behavior by people on the right, and the celebrating of Kyle and the fact that they're not going to treat him as some sort of hero moving forward scares the living daylights out of me.
So you say Rittenhouse for office, running for office?
They already have been. We laugh, but there have already been 3 Republican members of Congress who've offered him a position as an intern on the Hill. Clearly based on no actual educational qualifications, but simply because
national name.
Correct. I mean, this to me is the problem, right? It's the elevation of somebody. We can acknowledge, again, set aside for a second what you think about the criminal nature of the trial. We should all be in agreement that what he did was really, really bad, and behavior, criminal or not, that should not be accepted, and we should not tolerate and accept. And unfortunately, there's a big slice of our population that not only accepts it, they celebrate it.
Well, yeah, they don't only celebrate it, but they in fact encourage it. I mean, there've been Republican assemblies in other parts of the country where people have said on the microphone, when is it going to be okay for us to start killing them? There's a war going on. Okay, the war, and the issue is, who does this country belong to? Kyle Rittenhouse is a soldier for those who take the position that this country belongs to white men. And as such, he will be honored as any other soldier would, who's been to war and come back as a national hero. The thing that's scariest about all of this is that you don't have to cross state lines to get that position. In other words, there are people who believe what I just said, whether Kyle Rittenhouse did or not, I don't know. But there are people who believe what I just said, who are residents of areas that will now to some extent feel free to take up the weapons they've been holding on to and find situations that are close enough where they can invent a self-defense position, and they will act out their aggression.
So this is where I think what Robert just said, I think segues well into the Georgia trial, because to me, this is the more troubling case. If there was a plausible legal basis for Kyle Rittenhouse being acquitted, there is absolutely no plausible basis whatsoever legally for the acquittal of these defendants in Georgia. And I think if you see an acquittal in a situation where these guys literally created their own confrontation and then shot a black guy who was just running down the street, if they're acquitted, we're having, at least from my perspective, a very, very different conversation, because now you can fabricate your own set of facts and then just assert you can literally chase somebody jogging down the street, cut him off with a car, hit him with a car, approach him with a shotgun, and then when he tries to defend himself, shoot him and claim self-defense, then I just throw my hands in there and say, I don't know what else we can do.
Well, I threw my hands in there when it happened with Tavon Martin. I mean, this is it wouldn't be the first time that's happened.
But go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and frankly, it's been happening all along. It's never really stopped. There are many cases where you didn't even have to offer a defense of self-defense to get away with it. So
I think some people were hopeful, and look, I'm not suggesting that one case turns a tide of generations. But I think there was some sense of hope after the Chauvin conviction in the George Floyd case that maybe there was going to be some accountability, that maybe the tide was starting to shift. After the George Floyd murder, you saw a tremendous groundswell of public support for the Black Lives Matter movement, more so than had been the case previously. And it ultimately led to a first-degree murder conviction, which was something I think a lot of people didn't believe until it actually happened, for reasons that you're talking about, Robert. I think all of that gets undone if these defendants get acquitted in Georgia.
Or I would agree, but if you look around now, you already see, after George Floyd, there was this groundswell of police reform legislation introduced around the country. In Maryland, one of them was one bill was successful in abolishing the law enforcement officers' Bill of Rights. But in most other states where that kind of legislative push was, those laws have already been rescinded. The so-called defunding of police, which was never an effort to defund the police to begin with, but the extent to which laws were passed or in Austin, Texas is a good example, where they wanted to reallocate a portion of the money in the police budget to a more productive use, which has now been by the legislature reversed, and they actually passed a law prohibiting any jurisdiction from taking money, from reducing the budget of the police department. Of course, the city manager in Austin says he's going to try to get around it by now, instead of removing it from the budget, repurposing it within the budget. And I'm sure that's going to be knocked down by some judge as well. So that what I'm saying is the George Floyd effect was short-lived in reality. It was short-lived.
I want to shift gears, Mr. DeShiel. You alluded to Maryland. Here in the city of Baltimore, we have a serious murder problem, and I submit that the consent decree has everything to do with the crime fighting. Right now, an officer cannot arrest someone for loitering. They have to go through a long list of things before they can remove someone off of the corner who's been standing there for 8, 9, 10 hours selling drugs. Is the consent decree working? And if it's not, then at what point will we be able to review it? Or is this par for the course?
Well, Donnie, I can't disagree with you more that the consent decree prohibits, restrains, or limits any lawful action of anybody wearing a badge. It does not. That's fictionalized. That's nothing more than a slogan. If loitering and selling drugs are not the same thing, by the way. If a police officer sees someone standing on the corner selling drugs, I assure you there's nothing in the consent decree that prohibits them from making that arrest. If, on the other hand, the evidence shows that loitering, the so-called crime of loitering, has been disparately used against Black people to help create criminal records, which keep young Black kids from joining the police force, which I think is one of the biggest problems with the police department in Baltimore City, is that it's manned significantly by people who don't live in the city, who not only don't live in the city, but don't look like city residents. And one of the significant problems with that is we no longer encourages our youth to become police. Not to say that the discouragement comes from what they see and read about as the actions of some of the police officers, like the gun force test, but we've taken away the elements that encourage that, and we've allowed barriers, artificial barriers, to be created and maintained, which discourage young Black kids from even wanting to join the police force. Yes, crime is out of hand, but there are ways to combat crime that, as far as I know, haven't even been considered. For example, I just say it out loud. Grandma knows who did it. Okay, Grandma knows who did it. We need to pay Grandma to tell. We need to give Grandma a dedicated phone to a dedicated line that will only call a specific number, and pay Grandma to ring that phone every time she sees somebody do something, and she knows where they are. Pay the payments, in other words.
Neil, a 13-year-old was shot and killed in front of Lillian Jones Recreation Center here in Sandtown.
Yeah,
just blocks from where I live. What I do not understand is that this wasn't the Italian mafia. This wasn't the Russian mob. This was clearly a young person who didn't like the results of a street fight, who went and got a gun. Why is it taking so long to find this person? It's not rocket science. Someone knows who pulled the trigger. It's not complicated. $20. They have a $13,000 reward out there. I'm telling you, you can find out for $20 who did it. Why is it taking so long? Why this 13-year-old girl has been killed without any answers?
Yeah. So in the Donnie Glover versus Robert DeShield debate about the consent decree, I'm going to lean more toward Donnie's side than Robert's side, and I'll tell you why. To me, and I'm oversimplifying it, there are two fundamental parts to policing, right? There's the prevention of crime, and then there's the responding to criminal activity that's already occurred. And obviously, with regard to the response to criminal activity already occurred, the consent decree doesn't impact that because the crime has happened. Police show up, they make arrests, they do what they need to do. Where I think it has made a difference is the behavior of police officers on the margins in terms of preventing crime before it happens. I think there's a concern among that the consent decree, what it has done is it has diminished the ability or desire on the part of a lot of police officers to do some of the investigation that is necessary to uncover crime before it happens, because they're concerned that to do so may run afoul of the consent decree. And so
I got to cut it, Neil. It's not just the consent decree. That coupled with Marilyn Mosby's decision to prosecute those officers since Freddie Gray. So we can't leave that out. It was a 1-2 punch how all of this came about. But now here we are. And on top of that, the state's attorney is not prosecuting low-level crimes. And on top of that, now you have Miss Roya and also Ivan Bates, who will be challenging her for her job. Will Marilyn Mosby get reelected, Neil?
No. I don't think she will. I could be wrong. Wouldn't be the first time.
Well, I don't know, Donnie, but here's my even if Neil is correct that the consent decree has had a quote chilling effect on the officers' desire to do investigations or to follow their hunches or whatever they do. If anybody else doesn't do the job, you fire them, right? So if we know who the officers are who are not doing the job, get rid of them. I'm not here to make excuses for them. The time for excuses is over. I don't care what you have no excuse for not doing your job and still collecting a paycheck. There's no excuse for that.
Is the ACLU an obstacle? Because quite often I hear them commenting on what the legalities are in Baltimore. My real question is, do they live here? Do the people at the ACLU that are always challenging laws as it relates to Baltimore City, do they live here? Because they have an awful lot of say-so on how we live. It's like the bike lanes. These people have advocated for bike lanes, and I don't see not one person in a bike lane, except on St. Paul Street, Maryland Avenue.
Well, you're not going to get any argument about me about bike lanes. I think they were a waste of taxpayer money, and they are unnecessary obstruction to the free movement of vehicular transportation throughout Baltimore City, particularly mine. So you're not going to get any argument from me about that at all. But Donnie, I don't think there's ever any reason not to do what you know is right. Okay, the courts are there for people who want to challenge your actions. Our problem is there are politicians whose primary objective is to get reelected. That's our problem. We don't have leadership with guts. We don't have leadership with moral standards. We don't have leadership with people who are willing to do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. That's our problem.
Neil, final question. Can we bring a class action lawsuit against the...
Yes, I don't even need to hear the rest of the question. It's America. The answer is yes.
For the Baltimore City public school system's failure to produce a efficient product. Who wants to move their Fortune 500 here where 60 is passing?
Oh boy. A final question with a minute left, and you spring that one on us.
Hey, we'll take an extra 2 or 3.
How long? Extra 2 or 3 hours? Yeah, I mean the problem is so deep seated that and it's been decades in the making. I mean,
so tear it down and rebuild it. That's what's been suggested for the Baltimore Police Department. Start from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, except you're talking about people and homes and businesses that are like. I mean, I understand that conceptually, but how does that work in practice?
I don't know, but we have 60 is passing, and no state will have a full economic recovery with illiterate people.
Yeah, Donnie, but consider it from the other end. If the school system, and trust me, D is not passing in my judgment in any system, including Baltimore City. But if the school system actually produced people who were competent and they'd be properly educated, where would they work? There really is no place for them to work. So I'm suggesting to you that there's something much more deeply involved here, much deeper involved here. It's not just. I'm suggesting to you that the diseducation of the children of Baltimore City may itself be a planned outcome. Now, because the fact of the matter is, if they were all educated and all ready to go to work, there really wouldn't be jobs for them anyway. There really wouldn't. So the question. I mean, maybe I'm overly cynical. Maybe I'm just an old guy that's been around too long. Maybe I just don't believe. I don't know what I'm supposed to believe. What I'm told on my lying eyes. I don't know, but I'm telling you, it is not beyond suggestion. It is not beyond consideration that the outcome we see is a desired outcome. And why do I say that? Because everybody knows a D is not a passing grade, Donnie. What are you going to do? Go out and get a poorly paying job? You're going to buy a poorly run vehicle? You're going to get a poorly constructed house? You're going to, it's just not passing. And I don't care what, there's no excuse for not doing your job. And if you're a teacher, if your educational system, the proof of whether you're doing the job is the outcome, not what time you clock in, not how many syllabi you create, but it's in the outcome. It's in the education of our children. And that this system, as many others have, has failed abysmally.
We're going to have to leave it on that note. Attorney DeShiel, Attorney Dubovsky, we thank you for joining us. We'll be back at 7 p.m. tonight for the Donnie Glover Show. We'll be talking with a gentleman who's worked for 30 years with young people in the Baltimore City public, in the recreation system. His name is Rodell Bailey Eel.
Thank you, Donnie, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody and you guys and your families.
Same to you, Neil. Donnie, talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you.
Good morning, world.